I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus Christ said these words. We did part 1 of this series. I'd like us to continue with part 2. I'm not sure how many parts it's going to go because we have a lot to discuss when it comes to this topic. There's so much to discuss. And we actually got to talk about the reason for human incarnation and the incarnation of Christ into this world. Do Christians have a problem with the word incarnation? Because they do have a problem with the word reincarnation. They have a problem with that. I don't know if they have a problem with the incarnation of Christ, because that is what happens. First time someone comes into this world, you incarnate into this world. And should a devout Christian attempt to reflect on what we are talking about, they will connect themselves with another world, with this world that is invisible to them. But this invisible world, which has such a great significance for human beings, is precisely what human beings don't want to hear about. Christians don't want to hear about it. And as such, it is essential to explain to devout Christians that this world is actually the real world. It's the real world. It's the real world. And if they concern themselves a little, just a little more with what will come after their death, if everyone will concern themselves with just a little of what will happen after your death, do you really believe that on dying you will just close your eyes and that's it? That's it. You're no more, you cease to exist. Remember, Jesus Christ said, even though you die, you shall live. He did not say, for some of you. But for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And you do know that physical death is very different from spiritual death. We discussed in part 1 that the spiritual death means separation from God. A separation from God. That is the spiritual death. So when you die, you go to where you belong spiritually. Spiritually. When you die, you go to where you belong. And how do you know where you belong? Depending on the kind of life that you've been living here on earth. That's how you know where you belong. If really everyone concerned themselves just a little more with what will come after the death, then you will also realize that it would be good for you to befriend this other world somewhat. Since you know that it exists, the least you can do is to be friends with this other world. Now in this hour, I would like to uplift your hearts and souls and fill them with strength and faith and also with joy. For it is certainly a great joy to humanity that Christ fulfilled the mission he received from God. Christ indeed fulfilled the mission, and he did it perfectly. He got out of this world sinless. So now in this hour, I would just like to quote these words of Christ, that he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's in John chapter 14, in verse 6. And when he spoke these words, his disciples did indeed listen to him. When he spoke these words, his disciples listened to him. But it seems they understood just as little as many people understand today. Why do we say that? Clearly, if there was great understanding back in the day that flowed up to now, there will never be this half-heartedness we're seeing in Christianity. There wouldn't. Christ spoke so much about his kingdom, and he also explicitly said that his kingdom is not of this world. That's in John chapter 18, verse 36, right? Let's read, right? So this is what John chapter 18, verse 36 says. And Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers will be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from this world." That is what Jesus Christ said, that my kingdom is not from this world. So that means he was directing you to his kingdom that is in a different world, right? Indeed, he mentioned who the ruler of this world is. He says, "But the ruler of this world is coming, but he has no hold over me." Isn't that what he said? So Christ spoke so much about this kingdom, and he explicitly said that my kingdom is not of this world. And therefore, about the kingdom of his Father, he spoke all the time about his Father's kingdom. All the time he spoke about his Father's kingdom. But the disciples, even though they were so close to him and lived together with him, always imagined and hoped for an earthly kingdom. As it is with humanity, we are carnal. We always think physical, not spiritual. But remember, the spiritual world is the real world. That is what comes first, And they lived together with him. They always imagined and hoped for this earthly kingdom. Their thinking was so human. And even though the Lord was in their midst and bore witness to his origin, the disciples just often failed to understand him, and he sometimes had to give them additional explanations. For example, when they understood, he actually had to say, when you tell us like this, now we understand. Every time Jesus could tell them a parable, sometimes he had to go back with them. Now they ask him, "Hey, Master, what did you mean here?" And now he will tell them that this is what I mean. Okay? So I am the way, the truth, and the life.